Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to our channel, The Forgotten Files. Also, drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from and what time it is. Alright, let's get started. In 1853, in a corner of Louisiana no historian likes to mention, 3 plantation masters recorded the same confession in their private ledgers, each claiming they had seen the same thing when the mute slave boy slept in the bedchamber of their estate. By morning, all 3 had abandoned their property, fled the county, and died within months, babbling the same phrase: "His silence is not human." The county archived the records under private entries, not for public review. Until now. Tonight, we uncover the story of the mute boy no master would keep past a single night, and the reason no one dared speak of him again. The boy appeared in 1852 near the banks of the Washita River, approximately 12 years old, barefoot, bruised, and utterly silent. He didn't beg, didn't gesture, didn't cry. He simply stood, as if waiting to be acknowledged. Local slave traders saw immediate value: a healthy child, strong build, no apparent injury. But within minutes of inspection, 2 traders stepped back, whispering the same thing: "His eyes don't follow right." When spoken to, the boy stared directly ahead, even if the speaker circled behind him. But when left alone, witnesses claimed they heard him whispering, not words, but rhythmic pulses, like a breath someone was imitating. No one knew where he came from. No missing plantation records matched his appearance. And the boy gave no name, not even in writing. They called him Quiet Joshua. Quiet Joshua's first placement was with the Bentons, a wealthy family with a grand white-columned home overseeing 600 acres of cotton fields. The master, Elias Benton, had a strict rule: new slaves spent their first night inside the house, sleeping on a cot at the foot of the master's bed. He claimed it was for observational discipline, though everyone knew it was about asserting power. Joshua was brought in at dusk. He did not resist. He simply lay on the cot, hands crossed neatly over his chest. By sunrise, Elias Benton was gone. The front door stood open. His boots were found on the porch. His horses were still in the stable. His breakfast tray lay untouched. The only witness, his daughter, insisted she woke up to hear her father whispering frantic prayers, followed by a long, continuous exhale that wasn't his voice. Joshua was transferred that evening. The plantation accountant wrote a single chilling line in the estate ledger. The boy emitted no sound, yet filled the room with a presence not of this world. No elaboration, no context. But Benton's disappearance was labeled voluntary abandonment, and the investigation stopped after one day. Meanwhile, Joshua was sold at a tremendous loss, other masters calling him property with complications. Some swore the boy wasn't dangerous, merely unsettling. But one overseer burned his gloves after touching Joshua's shoulder, mumbling that the boy's skin felt too still. Even the slaves avoided him, not out of cruelty, but fear. Joshua's second owner, Franklin Mott, was a harsh, practical man who didn't believe in superstition. He insisted the boy sleep in the master's quarters his first night, mocking the Benton family for running off like frightened hens. That night, Mott locked the door. At dawn, the door was still locked from the inside, but Mott was found outside, barefoot, halfway across a frozen field, staring at the rising sun with tears streaming down his face. When questioned, he couldn't form sentences. He only tapped the center of his throat with 2 fingers, as though reminding himself he had a voice. Quiet Joshua was again removed. Workers on the Raven farm later recounted that while Joshua walked normally during the day, his shadow did not match his steps. Sometimes it lagged behind. Sometimes it froze entirely. One elderly woman swore that when she passed him carrying water, she felt a memory that wasn't hers sink into her mind. Something cold, stretching back centuries, whispering of a temple buried under river mud. They began calling Joshua not a boy, but a vessel. No one knew what that meant. By 1853, no one wanted Joshua, except a traveling preacher named Abner Cole. Cole claimed he could purify the boy, insisting that mute children often carried devils of silence, an old Southern superstition. He kept Joshua in his own bedroom the first night, convinced he could drive out whatever plagued him. But by morning, Cole's wife found the preacher kneeling beside the bed, his Bible open but the pages blank, every single one turned white. Joshua sat calmly on the cot. Cole, however, was shaking violently, repeating, "There is no word. There has never been word. Only the before place." Children on various estates noticed things adults didn't. One girl said Joshua hummed without moving his mouth. A boy claimed that when he looked directly into Joshua's eyes, he saw a reflection of himself, but older, terrified, and standing in a place filled with stone pillars. Another child swore that Joshua never blinked at night. These stories circulated quietly, whispered between cabins. The adults dismissed them until they began hearing the humming too. The hum grew stronger as weeks passed. Witnesses described it as neither musical nor mechanical, something between wind in a tunnel and breath against a jar. Doctors were called. They found no explanation, though one physician claimed the hum seemed to come from inside people's skulls rather than the air. The strange part? Joshua himself never made a sound. The humming only began after he slept in someone's room, as if he left behind a residue of silence that grew louder with time. In 1854, Reverend Samuel Pike wrote a secret letter to a colleague describing a mute boy passed between estates and rumored to carry an ancient absence. He referenced a banned theological idea, the first silence, a belief that before creation, something conscious existed in the void, and that fragments of it still lingered in the world. Pike believed Joshua was one of those fragments. His letter was sealed, never mailed, and stored in the church basement, discovered only in 1937. The last line read, "His presence unravels the lie of sound." A teenage choir girl later confessed that she once watched Joshua alone in the church pews. He sat motionless, yet she heard whispers behind her. When she turned, no one was there, but the whispers multiplied, layering over each other, all repeating the same thing. He remembers when there was no sky. She fled the church and refused to sing again. When no master would buy Joshua, the county sent him to a private orphanage known for taking in difficult children. He slept in a communal bedroom. By dawn, every other child was huddled against the far wall, crying. None could speak for hours. The orphanage matron wrote, "Their voices returned, but something else went missing. Not memories, but the ability to feel certain memories." Joshua was removed within days. Decades later, in 1919, a historian named Margaret Elwood traveled through Louisiana documenting slave-era records. She found references to Joshua scattered across 3 counties, each more unsettling than the last. One plantation doctor wrote that Joshua's heartbeat was too steady, never rising, never slowing. Another noted that the boy's body temperature was slightly lower than human normal, but consistent, as though calibrated. A schoolteacher wrote that Joshua understood complex instructions instantly, yet never reacted emotionally. Elwood concluded one thing. Joshua was not traumatized mute. He was born without the concept of speech, as if from a place where speech had never existed. One of the darkest accounts came from a seminary where a group of young ministers took Joshua in for a night, hoping to restore God's voice into him. They locked him in the chapel. By midnight, students awoke to bells ringing, though the chapel had no bells. When they opened the door, they found Joshua standing in the center of the room, and every student present felt their thoughts slowing, as if an invisible hand was gently pulling words out of their minds. The effect lasted 10 minutes. For some, the lost words never returned. The last man who took Joshua was a plantation owner named Marshall Crane, a skeptic, a bully, a man who believed fear itself was a weakness. He declared he would keep Joshua for good. He placed the boy's cot directly beside his own bed, convinced he would prove everyone wrong. At midnight, the entire house awoke to Crane screaming. When they reached him, he was clawing at his throat, sobbing. Joshua watched calmly from the cot. 15 minutes later, Crane was gone, his mind shattered. He never spoke again. After Crane's collapse, townspeople demanded Joshua be removed from Louisiana. But one morning, before county authorities could arrive, Joshua vanished. No footprints, no sightings, no body, just an empty cot and a faint hum that lingered for hours. Some believed he ran away. Others believed he returned to wherever he came from, a place without voice, without memory, without sound. In 1932, federal surveyors cataloging forgotten plantations uncovered a locked crate containing documents labeled Case, the Silent One. Inside were testimonies, ledgers, medical notes, and a sketch of Joshua. The eerie part? The sketch had no mouth. and the penciled note beneath it read, "Not omitted, drawn as seen." In 1978, acoustic engineers analyzed the descriptions of the hum associated with Joshua. They concluded it resembled infrasilence, a theoretical auditory phenomenon below recorded human perception. One scientist suggested the boy might not have emitted sound, but rather canceled it, as if he were not producing silence. He was restoring it, returning the world to a default state that existed before sound. Scholars studying Pike's old letters proposed a disturbing idea. Joshua was a remnant of the first silence, the void consciousness predating creation myths. He wasn't evil. He wasn't cursed. He was simply incompatible with a world built on noise, words, memory, and identity. Sleeping in someone's room allowed this ancient silence to seep into their minds. And once it did, the mind could not go back. Today, the story of Quiet Joshua is barely mentioned in historical records, dismissed as superstition or local myth. But in Louisiana, elders still tell their children, if you hear no sound, but feel you should leave the room. Some claim Joshua still appears from time to time, always mute, always watching, always waiting. Not for violence, not for vengeance, but for a world quiet enough for him to live in again. A world of before sound, a world he remembers, and one day may return us to.